Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we are talking about how Nintendo could be planning a Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remake gameplay demonstration to be shown off soon. How soon? Like before the end of the summer soon, like before September soon. Considering that we're at the end of June, that would just give us pretty much a 2-month window where this might be happening if what I'm thinking here is on the money. And a lot of people really want to see more about this game because people don't really know what it is. There's a debate right now. Some people are left with the thought that this game is basically going to be kind of like how Nintendo handled Star Fox. Star Fox has come out today. Happy Star Fox release day. I'll be picking it up after I finish today's video. But as excited as I am for Star Fox, I do not believe the evidence actually points to this game being like Star Fox, but actually being something grander. And if it is going to be something grander, then Nintendo probably does need to give us a gameplay demonstration, a showcase of this game in the not-so-distant future. And so today what I'm going to be doing is explaining more so why this game is probably more than just what Nintendo's done for the Star Fox remake, why Nintendo probably is planning some sort of gameplay demonstration soon, and why it's probably going to be, if not in the month of July, in August, and why that would be separate from a Nintendo Direct that would also talk about Zelda 40th Anniversary stuff, probably this September. But before doing all that, let me simply point out that I am trying to reach 60,000 subscribers soon, so if you find yourself enjoying my videos and you haven't subscribed already, I would very much appreciate your subscription. Okay, so let's handle the Star Fox comparison first. Now that Star Fox reviews have gone out there, I've noticed this common sentiment that a lot of people are perhaps worried that Nintendo will handle the Ocarina of Time remake in the same way, because what we've learned from the Star Fox reviews is that there isn't substantially new content, like there isn't like a whole bunch of new levels to the campaign. There is a whole bunch of new story stuff, there is a new multiplayer, there is a new challenge mode, but there isn't anything else secret that we've come to learn about this game, at least from reviews. And so some people are led to believe that we're probably going to get the same thing with this Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time remake. But I don't think that's what the evidence is pointing to, and let me explain here. Firstly, Star Fox is a budget title. $50 digitally, $60 physically, even though some retailers are selling it for $50. The Ocarina of Time remake, from the way things are being presented so far, appears to be probably Nintendo's big headliner for the holidays, perhaps their largest release for the entirety of 2026. I think it's extremely unlikely that that's going to be a budget title. Perhaps part of the reason why this Star Fox title, which does look to not be a budget title from a visual presentation perspective, is because it doesn't have substantially new content. Perhaps Nintendo had that in mind when choosing this pricing structure. I think it's very unlikely that Nintendo would do that again for the Ocarina of Time remake, especially considering the rest of their offerings for this year. So that's one reason why I think this Ocarina of Time remake is going to be grander than the Star Fox one. But two, we've already seen within the metadata for Nintendo's store page of this game, it was initially described as this N64 classic being reborn as a full remake for Switch 2. Nintendo never uses that wording, full remake, and they rarely describe something as being reborn either. So they're really building up expectation there. There were other things said, how it would have stunning visuals, updated designs, timeless gameplay, but they actually changed that once people started reporting on it, that this classic is returning for a new generation in 2026, reborn exclusively for Switch 2. They're really sticking to that reborn wording. They've used that many times. They use that in the Direct, they've used that on their social media pages, and they even use it in the description for the store listings for this game, even though it's technically not being displayed for typical public, but if you check the metadata, you can see it. And so in my opinion, it's raising expectation here. And I think this is actually something really important to consider because Nintendo's not the kind of company to raise expectation. They temper expectation. Whenever Nintendo announces a Direct presentation, they're like, oh, this is about this. If it's a movie Direct, they'll be clear to say there will be no games here. Or they'll be like, oh, this is only about games in this particular period of time, or that will be the focus. Even when they revealed Star Fox, very quickly they told us before they showed us any gameplay that it's a remake of Star Fox 64. So Nintendo's very cautious about setting expectations here, but what they did with the Ocarina of Time remake, they described it as a game being reborn for Nintendo Switch 2. It was not referred to a remake in the Nintendo Direct. Koizumi did not say that, and the teaser left a lot for imagination. So that's another reason why I think this is actually going to be something bigger. Now, going beyond that reasoning, as I already talked about in another video, just taking a look at the teaser trailer, there's a lot of evidence there that there are significant changes happening. The fact that the Deku Tree is no longer the narrator, because this is being presented as the beginning of the game, and the Deku Tree is a narrator in the original Ocarina of Time and the 3DS remaster, because they're the same game, just with slightly improved visuals, or changed visuals in some cases. There's someone else narrating what's going on here. The Deku Tree is referred to in third person, but then also Link has the Triforce on his hand in this beginning, which is not the case in the original introduction to the game. So there's some substantial story changes happening here, and there's also substantial design changes as well. Link's hat looks completely different now. His clothes look completely different now. The Deku Tree looks completely different now. The designs are significantly different, and this tapestry is actually being rendered in 3D in a 3D environment. And considering what happened with Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, how they also had these presentations of these murals or tapestries that can be found in the game, I also think that's the case for this, especially because it's being rendered in 3D, so realistically, inside of some kind of room, this is something I'm confident we will be able to find in the game. Not everyone agrees, but I guess we'll see here. However, if you're on the same page as me, then you would then have to think that this is another reason to believe that they're doing more with this remake here. Not to mention, we've seen a patent from Nintendo where they're exploring around with how Navi would interact with the environment and the user interface in what appears to be the Forest Temple, which suggests that they are playing around with gameplay concepts here and reinventing some things for this game. So with all that in mind, I am expecting some significant changes here to the game. How significant, that still remains to be seen, but significant changes where this will be the most ambitious remake, if you even want to call it a remake, Nintendo has ever done. And so that's going to mean that Nintendo will likely need to tell us more about this game before it comes out, and it may even require a gameplay demonstration to appropriately showcase how this is a new experience retelling the legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And actually, there's one more point that I want to talk about here to explain why this Ocarina of Time remake is very unlikely to be similar to the Star Fox effort here. Because you see, with the Star Fox effort, recreating the levels one-to-one makes sense because that gameplay is simple and timeless. Ocarina of Time, on the other hand, that is not the case. If they were to recreate the entire world, the levels, the dungeons, it all, one-to-one just with better visuals, it wouldn't look right. The scaling would be off. The gameplay has not aged so well because it's a far more sophisticated, complicated game where there's been so many different modernizations. Star Fox is an on-rail shooter. There isn't really too much complexity to the levels there. Ocarina of Time, on the other hand, there's an extreme amount of complexity there, so to just improve the visuals, you're really going to be losing out a lot here in terms of the game holding up well for the modern standard. Much needs to be updated structurally for Ocarina of Time to meet up to the modern standard, so Nintendo can't get away with doing the same thing. It just would not work well. During Nintendo Prime's podcast yesterday, we were talking about some of these ideas, and Sandstorm presented the point that Jabu Jabu, like from the outside, it looks like a pretty big fish, but when you go inside of him, it's a far bigger environment. The scaling there does not match, and perhaps back in 1998, you could suspend your disbelief there, but now in 2026, especially with seamless loading, or nearly seamless loading, something like that is just not going to work well. They're going to need to change the structure, the scaling of different creatures and buildings and such, so it makes sense. And so that's just another reason to believe that they have to do more with this Ocarina of Time remake here. There's more to showcase, there's more changes that need to be had to do this right. And so you might be wondering, why do I think there'd be a presentation that wouldn't be a Nintendo Direct that would be happening before September? Because September is usually where we get the big Nintendo Directs, and I actually do think that there probably is going to be a 40th anniversary celebration. It's actually out of the ordinary for Nintendo to not have made an official announcement yet. They do that typically around this time of the year. However, they at least gave us this big announcement for the Ocarina of Time. So what I'm left thinking in regards to Nintendo's anniversary plans here is that they're going to be handling it very similar to how they handled Mario's anniversary plans, where they tied it into a Nintendo Direct and the marketing for the next big movie. And the next big movie is coming out late April, so later into this year, around September, would be right around the time where it would make sense to start marketing this movie And so I wouldn't be surprised if the September Nintendo Direct has a significant portion dedicated to Zelda's 40th anniversary, the same way the prior September Direct had a significant portion dedicated to Mario's 40th anniversary, and in that one, they gave us the Mario Galaxy movie trailer, other game announcements including Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 coming to Switch 2. This time around, I think it's going to be about the live-action Zelda movie, some other Zelda anniversary stuff, and yes, of course, at least a mention, probably some kind of new trailer for the Ocarina of Time remake. However, to do the Zelda movie trailer and a new Ocarina of Time remake trailer when we've barely seen anything on the game at the same time seems like too much in my opinion. What I think makes more sense is for us to see more about this game before that point, especially if it is truly going to be Nintendo's big holiday title for the year, which I think is a pretty safe bet at this point. They probably want to start showcasing more of this game leading up to the holidays before September. That's the usual thing to do here, considering we've seen barely anything of the game, not even a 2-minute trailer here. And so while I still think there's going to be a Zelda 40th Anniversary Direct, and I think it makes a lot of sense for probably September, especially accounting for movie marketing, they gotta show this game off before that point. And so maybe it's just like a new trailer drop, they just drop randomly in August, maybe it's a Nintendo Treehouse, that's also a possibility. But what I think they're going to do is the final Aonuma presentation. Maybe he also has a presence throughout the Zelda movie marketing, that does make a lot of sense. But Aonuma is getting to a point where you gotta start thinking that he's going to be retiring relatively soon. We've been seeing and hearing about different Nintendo representatives retiring, recently Kensuke Tanabe, but I'm reminded of the presentation we saw for Tears of the Kingdom in March of 2023. You see, it wasn't a Nintendo Direct, it wasn't a Treehouse, it was something a little bit different, where Aonuma just spent some time playing through and explaining the game for us. I wouldn't be surprised if they do something a little bit like that. Now, maybe they do something a little bit different, where they do provide also like a trailer, so maybe it is still like an Ocarina of Time Nintendo Direct, as Nintendo's been doing a lot of game-specific directs and such throughout the Switch 2 generation. It doesn't seem too shocking that they would want to do another one. We're about to get a Splatoon Direct, we got a Tomodachi Life Direct earlier, we had a Star Fox Direct, last year we had a Mario Kart World Direct, a Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct, 2 Kirby Air Rider Directs. So there's a pretty strong chance that Nintendo will have just straight up a dedicated Ocarina of Time Remake Direct, and in this Direct, I do think it makes sense to think there will be a trailer. But beyond the trailer, I think they will be showing us extended gameplay, and perhaps Aonuma, the Zelda series producer, will take the time to talk about this game and explain how this is something that isn't just a one-to-one remake for Ocarina of Time. And so this is my expectation here. The Ocarina of Time remake is the most ambitious remake Nintendo's ever done. It's going to be more than one-to-one. There's going to be changes here, substantial in my opinion, or at least substantial enough that's going to be worthy of having a presentation that showcases these differences. I think this presentation is likely happening in August, and I haven't clarified on this point yet, but my reasoning behind this is because we have a lot kind of going on between now and July. We have Tomodachi Life and Splatoon Raiders coming out in July. In August, there are no big Nintendo titles slated, or any Nintendo published titles slated currently, so there is a vacancy there in terms of attention. And Gamescom is coming up towards the end of August, and you have PAX in the beginning of September, where there's an expectation Nintendo's going to have a presence with gameplay demonstrations. And so with Ocarina of Time Remake being their big holiday release, and this is kind of the time where people are going to have an opportunity to go and play what they have to offer, I think that's going to be part of the selection, and if it's going to be part of the selection, then they probably should have some kind of presentation showcasing the game before that point. And so that happens, I think, likely in August, before Gamescom, before PAX, and then in September we have our 40th Anniversary Direct, where they talk about the Zelda movie, and they give us another update on the Ocarina of Time, and then they market that game all the way leading up to November, where also there'll probably be a release for some special Switch 2 edition, and then Zelda movie marketing will continue until, obviously, it comes out in April, and in the meanwhile, there'll likely be Zelda concerts. Maybe Nintendo puts out something else for Zelda 40th Anniversary that's a bit smaller. That's my expectation here. That's how I think things are going to pan out. And so right now, my mind is just kind of thinking about, well, what are they changing in the Ocarina of Time remake? As I've been talking about, as I'm going to be continuing to talk about, there's a lot of interesting possibility here. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.